Welcome to my video blog in my studio. I'm Gayle Weisfield, a professional watercolor artist. When you begin watercolor, there's 2 or 3 things you can do to really guarantee yourself quick success. The first thing, and one of the most important, is to always paint on a good stretch. That's why I always use a Boga board when I paint. It stretches the paper tight, and I don't have the buckles and ripples to work over. The second most important thing is a high quality 100% rag paper. The brand I prefer is Saunders or Arches, and I find that those 2 papers work very well for me. There are many other papers and I use them all, but I like the softness of Saunders, and I have here half a sheet of Saunders. When you purchase paper, it comes in a 22 by 30 inch sheet. This is a half of that, 15 by 22, and it's 140 pound paper. You can buy lighter paper, it's less expensive, but when you buy the lighter paper, oftentimes your pigment will bleed through, and if you want to turn your paper over and paint on the other side, you can't do it, so it actually isn't necessarily a better buy unless you are perfect with all of your paintings, and I'm not quite there yet, so I buy the 140 pound. When I first began to paint, this was the first brush that I actually used as a painter. It was a badger hair brush and stiff as a plank, and I could never understand why all my watercolors were dull and lackluster. If you use a fiber that's this stiff in your brush, even just to wet your paper, what you find is that this fiber will drive the moisture deep into the fibers of your paper, and the pigment soaks in deeper, and you lose the white reflective luster that the paper in watercolor offers you. That's where so much of the beauty of watercolor comes from. As a beginning student, it's always confusing to know what brushes to buy and how to pick them out. Watercolor brushes are unique to themselves. You can't do oil or acrylic with them because they have special qualities that lend their self to just watercolor. When you select a brush in watercolor, you want to make sure that the fibers are very soft. There's no hard fibers whatsoever, and the brush should hold a lot of water, keep a nice firm edge, and when you flex the brush, it should go back to its original shape. This gives you a lot of control as a painter. I typically paint with a flat brush. As you can see, I have a variety. This is the brush I use as a wash brush and to wet my paper, but most of my painting is done with flat brushes. I find I control the amount of water in the brush a lot better with the flat. I sometimes need a large round brush, and then I use these brushes as my specialty brushes. I like to use a dagger and a rigger for details. They make wonderful trees and leaves. A rake brush comes in handy when I'm looking for texture a place or two. And of course you can't beat the loosey-goosey because it's so random and out of control you can't mess with it. Then probably one of my most important brushes is my toothbrush. I spray and texture everything with it, and my palette knife scrapes my highlights. I oftentimes laugh. I'll have a painting almost half done, and the only 2 brushes I've used is a toothbrush and a palette knife. So that's probably a surprise to most people. So when you select your brushes, cost is not the issue. There are lots of natural fibers that are very acceptable and last for years. So look for the quality of your brush that I discussed, and try other people's brushes when you go places. See what you like. See which works for you best.